Hello, I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. FBI Director Christopher Wray announced today that he's stepping down. Wray says he'll resign before incoming President Donald Trump takes office. Trump has said he'll nominate loyalist Kash Patel as FBI Director. Here was Patel shortly after the news broke.
We look forward to a very smooth transition at the FBI, and I'll be ready to go on day one.
Patel and several high-profile picks for jobs in Trump's new administration were back here in Washington today. Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kristi Noem were also meeting with senators on Capitol Hill. And we'll start tonight with Ed O'Keefe and Scott MacFarlane. Scott is on Capitol Hill, and Ed, I believe, is in New York covering the president-elect. Scott, I want to start with you on the Hill. We kind of expected some kind of announcement from Wray, given that Trump had already announced his plans to nominate Kash Patel to this position. But tell us a little bit about why Wray announced this today.
Yeah, this has been something he'd been considering for some time, according to sources speaking with CBS News, have been wrestling with for a while, trying to get a measure as to whether this was a good idea to do proactively or preemptively to a degree. In his statement to his employees in a very crowded room at FBI headquarters down the street, he said he did this to avoid dragging the agency through what's about to happen, through the political arguments that seem inevitable when Trump takes over when it comes to the relationship between the White House, the Department of Justice, and its law enforcement arm. But Christopher Wray's statement doesn't come as a shock here. I mean, there was an anticipation this was inevitable after Trump went ahead and nominated somebody to replace him, to fill a job that wasn't vacant. And as Kash Patel walked through here a short while ago, moments after Wray's announcement, he said, very similar to what you heard in that clip, that he's focused and will be ready on day one. I can tell you right now, Wray's announcement that he will resign does disarm Democrats of one of the arguments they've been using against Patel, that you can't be applying for a job and interviewing for a job that isn't open. Now it is. The berth is wider for Kash Patel.
And Ed, to you, you've been covering the transition here. Kash Patel has been meeting with senators. What's been the reaction to him? Does this seem like a Senate willing to confirm him?
Well, they're at least reserving judgment for now, but being somewhat supportive of his pick. We've heard a handful of senators do the, well, you know, as long as nothing else shows up in his record in the next several weeks, I guess I'm with him. But not as necessarily, huge outpouring of explicit support. There are obviously those that are most loyal to the president-elect and who believe generally that a president should get to have whoever it is he wants, absent some really egregious reason not to. But as they make their way through the Judiciary Committee and some other related committees, so far at least, senators have said that they're on board with him. And so we'll see if there is any other reservations about this. But, I think the other thing to keep in mind with all of this, Caitlin, is, in essence, Wray now is the biggest political casualty of the transition and of the forthcoming administration. While it was telegraphed really since Trump's failed re-election attempt back in 2020 that he might do this, certainly the fate was sealed earlier this month when he announced Kash Patel as his for his preference to lead the FBI. That was certainly a big signal as well. It's just a reminder that he is on a mission to clear out people like Wray who have wronged him in one way or another, and who, to his mind and to the mind of those he's nominating to some of these positions, reflect that sort of deep state mentality that he believes he's been elected to erase.
Right, and worth noting, too, that Trump was the one who appointed Wray in the first place. Scott, I want to switch gears a little bit because I know you've been on the Hill following this alleged assault against Congresswoman Nancy Mace. What happened and what are you hearing?
Yeah, a few important morsels of news to unpack as the day ended here in Washington. First of all, Congresswoman Mace of South Carolina alleges she was physically assaulted for political reasons while here beneath the protective dome of the Capitol complex by somebody who got past the metal detectors without any weapons, but who accosted her. You see her there with her arm in a sling. She says she injured the top of her arm, the wrist area in this assault. The Capitol Police Chief, testifying in an unrelated hearing late today, made a couple other revelations that these types of threats against lawmakers are increasing by orders of magnitude. In the past month, according to the Capitol Police Chief's testimony, more than 50 members of Congress have been swatting victims, the victims of swatting attacks, where somebody targets a public figure by alleging falsely there's some type of mass shooting or emergency at said person's home. The SWAT team deploys, and that can get very dangerous if there's a miscommunication when the SWAT team thinks there's a mass shooting at your home. That's one nugget. The other nugget from the Capitol Police Chief is that there have been 700 plus threat investigations involving members of Congress in just the past few weeks. It's actually a pretty consistent clip over this year. But he said they only have about 20 threat investigation agents, and that they are undermanned. And at this point need wildly more resources and manpower to keep up with the threat environment in this distinctively toxic political moment.
And with lawmakers being kind of the most accessible to the public, that is important to keep an eye on. Ed, I want to kind of stay in the Capitol because I know you've done a lot of reporting on Pete Hegseth. He is Trump's pick for defense secretary, of course. Today, he met with moderate Republican Susan Collins, who will be a key vote here. She had this to say after that meeting. Let's take a listen.
I obviously always wait until we have an FBI background check, and one is underway in the case of Mr. Hegseth. And I wait to see the committee hearing before reaching a final decision.
So, Ed, it seems like Hegseth is in a much better position than he was about a week ago. What exactly happened? What happened to kind of make him have some, at least for now, some staying power?
Well, again, I think he's being given, a lease on life that runs until his confirmation hearing, at least, by having all these Republican senators not say that they're outright opposed to him, not say that there's something specific in his record that gives them pause. But as you see Susan Collins there saying, I'll wait and look at the paperwork and I'll listen to the hearing. And yes, this is what she does. And she likes to drag it out. And eventually there'll probably be some dramatic floor speech where she announces her decision. And given that she's a Republican and she's facing re-election in a few years, that's going to be a factor in her decision. I think the one thing to watch throughout all of this, and there's been some other reporting on this elsewhere in the last few days, because it's been pretty apparent that it's the women of the Republican conference in the Senate who are the ones sort of expressing the most skepticism or concern about the allegations that were made against Hegseth and about his qualifications. We saw the Joni Ernst statement earlier this week or in recent days saying that, based on our conversation and the fact that he is committed to curbing sexual assault in the ranks and supports the idea of women remaining in combat, I look forward to watching the process play out. That is not a yes, that's a let him keep going. Susan Collins doing the same today. Lisa Murkowski has said something similar. But if any or all of those women start to break against him, it would be mathematically impossible and politically really difficult for Republicans to confirm him. So they're going to be a block to watch.
Yeah, indeed. Important context there. Scott, we're also following on Capitol Hill, a busy day up there. Secretary of State Blinken was there to offer testimony about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Let's play a little bit of his testimony.
Even the U.S. government's most pessimistic assessments did not anticipate that the Afghan government and security forces would collapse so rapidly in the face of Taliban advances. In the 3 years since the end of our country's longest war, all of us, including myself, have wrestled with what we could have done differently during that period and over the preceding 2 decades.
All right, Scott, that withdrawal happened 3 years ago. Why is Blinken on the Hill today, and what happened at this hearing?
Now, the Secretary and House Republicans battled for months over this testimony. Republicans threatened at one point to hold him in contempt of Congress and did for not answering them more promptly. The bottom line is this ends up where it's been over the past few months, with the Secretary saying the administration was jammed here, painted in a corner by then-President Trump for setting an artificial deadline and a public deadline for withdrawal. The Republicans saying the administration wildly mismanaged this. They campaigned on that. And to a degree, they campaigned very successfully on that failure.
They did indeed. Well, Ed and Scott, thank you for covering this transition from all angles today. We appreciate your reporting.